The announcement of Charlie Kirk's sudden death sent tremors through the American political landscape. News outlets broke the story with urgency, social media timelines filled with hashtags, and his supporters reacted in waves of shock, grief, and disbelief. For many conservatives, Kirk had not just been a commentator or activist, he was a soldier on the front lines of a cultural war, someone who built a following by challenging the mainstream narrative with relentless energy. At just 31, his passing felt not only tragic but premature, as though an unfinished chapter had been ripped from a story millions were still reading. Within hours, vigils were organized in cities across the country. College students who had once gathered under his Turning Point USA banner lit candles in his memory. Parents spoke of how Kirk had inspired their children to care about politics, and lawmakers issued statements recognizing his influence on the conservative movement. For many, Kirk had become a symbol of unapologetic patriotism, a figure whose death left a void not easily filled. But even as grief spread, another narrative emerged, one that cut deeply into the mourning. From the quiet of his home in Maine, horror novelist Stephen King fired off a series of tweets that stunned the nation. Known for his unfiltered opinions, King rarely shied away from political commentary, but this time, his words carried a sharpness that went beyond critique. "The world just became a slightly better place," King posted, in reference to Kirk's death. The backlash was instant. Thousands of replies poured in within minutes, with conservatives expressing outrage and even some liberals cringing at the cruelty of the remark. It wasn't long before King doubled down, following up with, "If you spend your life sowing division, don't expect sainthood in death." Screenshots of the tweets spread like wildfire across Facebook, Instagram, and cable news. Hosts debated whether King's comments represented truth-telling or heartless opportunism. Some defended his right to speak his mind, claiming Kirk himself had never held back when attacking his opponents. But many others argued that death should mark a moment of restraint, a pause for reflection rather than a platform for vitriol. In conservative circles, the outrage was fierce. Kirk's friends and colleagues accused King of lacking basic human decency. "You don't have to agree with someone to honor their humanity," one Fox News anchor said during a primetime broadcast. "Charlie deserves better than this." What struck many observers wasn't just the comment itself but the timing. Barely 24 hours had passed since Kirk's death. His family hadn't even held a funeral, yet his name was already being dragged into the mud of political warfare. The sense of cruelty was palpable, and even those who had clashed with Kirk publicly admitted they were uncomfortable with King's approach. Meanwhile, King's defenders claimed he was only being honest, that public figures should not be shielded from critique in death. His supporters applauded his bravery, seeing it as a refusal to allow conservatives to rewrite Kirk's legacy with flowery eulogies. Yet, as the argument raged, one thing became clear: King's words had divided the nation just as starkly as the man he attacked had during his life. The storm grew so intense that reporters began showing up outside King's home, eager to capture more of his reaction. Journalists filled entire segments dissecting his choice of words, interviewing experts on free speech and decency in mourning. For some, this was another example of America's fractured culture, where even death could not unite people, but only sharpen the lines between them. Amid this firestorm, one man watched with mounting anger. Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio. A close ally of Charlie Kirk and a frequent guest at his events, Vance had long admired Kirk's ability to mobilize young voters. He knew firsthand how much Kirk had invested in the conservative cause and how deeply he cared about America's future. To see his friend mocked in death, unable to defend himself, struck Vance as both cowardly and disgusting. While others hesitated to respond publicly, fearing the backlash of clashing with a literary titan like Stephen King, Vance prepared to speak out. He believed silence would be an insult to Kirk's memory and a betrayal of the movement they had both fought to build. The opportunity came at a memorial service held in Phoenix, where thousands had gathered to honor Kirk's life. The atmosphere was heavy with emotion. Photographs of Kirk lined the stage, candles flickered in the crowd, and a hush fell over the audience as Vance approached the podium. He began with warmth, recounting his friendship with Kirk and his admiration for the passion Kirk brought to every stage he stood upon. He spoke of Kirk's tireless energy, his devotion to encouraging young conservatives, and his unshakable belief that America's best days were still ahead. The crowd listened in solemn silence, nodding along, wiping away tears. But then, his tone shifted. His voice hardened, his expression sharpened, and the quietness of the room gave way to anticipation. Cameras clicked, news channels cut live, and millions watched as Vance addressed the storm head-on. "There are those," he said slowly, who believe that death is an opportunity to spit on a man's grave. They think cruelty is a form of courage. They think mocking the dead is a sign of wit. And one of those people, sadly, is Stephen King. Gasps rippled through the audience. Some leaned forward, others shook their heads, but no one looked away. Vance's words were piercing, deliberate, and unapologetic. Stephen King may have made a career writing about monsters, Vance continued, but this week, he revealed something darker. He revealed the monster within himself. To insult the memory of a man who cannot answer back is not bravery, it is cowardice. It is weakness masquerading as strength. The audience erupted, clapping and cheering. For the first time since Kirk's death, a wave of energy filled the room, not grief, but resolve. Vance had not only defended his friend's legacy, he had thrown down the gauntlet in a cultural battle that was only beginning. And as his words reverberated beyond the memorial, spreading across headlines and social feeds, one truth became clear: Stephen King had picked a fight, but J.D. Vance was ready to finish it. The ripple effect of J.D. Vance's scathing words against Stephen King spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Within minutes of the memorial service broadcast, clips of Vance's remarks were trending across Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Headlines appeared on every major outlet. Vance slams King in fiery tribute, J.D. Vance calls out Stephen King over Charlie Kirk insult, culture clash explodes after Kirk's death. For conservatives, Vance's speech was more than a defense of his friend, it was a rallying cry. Supporters flooded social media with messages praising his courage, sharing snippets of his clapback, and declaring that Vance had spoken for every American who believed that decency shouldn't vanish in the face of politics. Hashtags like #StandWithVance and #HonorCharlie quickly trended, turning the feud into a national moment. But Stephen King wasn't about to retreat. The novelist, known for his sharp tongue and unflinching presence online, took to Twitter yet again. This time, he directed his barb straight at Vance. J.D. Vance wants to lecture me on monsters. King wrote. Maybe he should take a long look in the mirror. Defending Kirk doesn't erase his poisonous rhetoric. Death doesn't give anyone a free pass. The post was liked and shared by thousands, and liberal commentators applauded King for refusing to back down. On talk shows and podcasts, his defenders argued that history should not be rewritten in glowing terms just because someone had passed. They framed King's remarks as a refusal to whitewash Kirk's controversial legacy. But if King thought Vance would fade away after one passionate speech, he miscalculated. Vance doubled down, appearing on Fox News, then CNN, and finally at a press conference where he made his stance unmistakably clear. I will not sit quietly while Stephen King insults a man who dedicated his life to his country, Vance told reporters. Disagree with Charlie's politics all you want, that's the nature of democracy. But spitting on his grave, mocking his death, that's not democracy. That's cruelty. And it's not something I'll ever tolerate in silence. The words struck a chord far beyond the conservative base. Moderates and even some liberals began questioning whether King had gone too far. Editorials appeared in major newspapers, some cautiously suggesting that Vance had a point, that the line between critique and cruelty had been blurred. The feud escalated further when King made an appearance on a late-night comedy show. Sitting opposite the host, he laughed off Vance's criticisms. The senator seems more offended by my tweets than by the things Kirk said while alive, King quipped, earning laughter from the studio audience. Maybe he's trying to score political points. If so, good luck to him, he'll need it. Clips from the appearance went viral, but not in the way King had hoped. Many viewers thought his laughter appeared smug, even dismissive of the grief Kirk's family and friends were still experiencing. The backlash intensified, and Vance seized the moment. At a town hall in Ohio, he delivered another broadside, this time directly addressing King's late-night appearance. Stephen King thinks this is all a joke, Vance thundered, his voice carrying the weight of indignation. He thinks mocking the dead is entertainment. He thinks it's clever. But let me tell you something, it's not clever, it's not brave, and it sure as hell isn't decent. It's shameful. The crowd erupted, chanting Kirk's name, cheering Vance with the fervor of a political rally. Cameras captured every moment, and the footage spread like wildfire. What had started as a single tweet had now grown into a national flashpoint, exposing not just the political divide but also the cultural war over civility, respect, and the boundaries of free speech. King, facing mounting criticism, attempted to clarify his comments in a lengthy interview with a major newspaper. He insisted that he had meant no disrespect to Kirk's family but believed public figures should not be sainted in death if their legacies were divisive. I stand by what I said, King remarked. But I regret if it caused pain to his loved ones. The attempt at softening his stance fell flat. By then, the narrative was already cemented. Stephen King had mocked a man in death, and J.D. Vance had risen as the defender of dignity. The more King tried to explain, the deeper he seemed to dig himself into the hole. Meanwhile, Vance's popularity soared. Fundraising numbers spiked, his name dominated the headlines, and his approval ratings in Ohio jumped noticeably. Analysts pointed out that his clash with King had elevated him from being just another senator to a national voice for conservatives, someone unafraid to stand toe-to-toe with cultural icons and call out what he saw as moral failings. The feud culminated weeks later when Vance and King both happened to be booked on the same Sunday morning political program. The producers, sensing ratings gold, placed them back-to-back in separate interviews. King went first, reiterating his stance and accusing Vance of using grief as a political weapon. But when it was Vance's turn, he delivered a line that instantly sealed the moment. Looking directly into the camera, he said, "Stephen King can call me whatever names he wants. He can write as many tweets or books as he likes. But at the end of the day, this is about something bigger than either of us. It's about who we are as a country. Do we respect the dead? Do we allow families to mourn without mockery? Or do we let cruelty become the new normal? I know where I stand. I stand with Charlie. I stand with dignity." The studio went silent for a moment before applause broke out among the live audience. The clip dominated news cycles for days, and even some of King's longtime readers admitted that Vance had won the moral high ground. In the end, the feud was less about King or Vance individually and more about the America they represented. One side championed unflinching critique, no matter how sharp or painful. The other demanded respect, even for one's fiercest opponents, when life's final curtain fell. Charlie Kirk's death had sparked grief, but it also ignited a clash that would be remembered as one of the most explosive cultural showdowns of the decade, a reminder that in politics, even death does not end the battle, but sometimes only begins it.